And
So yeah, any plant here would have to definitely export because that would be way too much volume for the U.S.
Well, I mean, it's pretty easy to speculate that you got to think they'd probably be looking at one of the crossovers, Q5 and Q7, and just because that's what the other German luxury brands have done here is used.
Because their main market is here for
Yeah.
those vehicles.
Well, Volkswagen's looking at building a Tiguan in Chattanooga already.
Is it really?
Yeah, that's the rumor.
Great, thank you.
Additions.
Cool.
The Q5 has been in short supply. That's one.
And possibly Miss Motormouth. Remember
Germany said, well, you don't need that here. You like the bigger sport utilities in North America. And Venetian said, oh, we could use the Q5 as well. And now they can't, the dealers can't keep it in stock.
Hey, I got to go through some announcements because we're going to start here in just a couple of minutes. I want to thank our partners tonight who are streaming this. wardsauto.com, that's just terrific. Also, we want to thank FordInsideNews.com and DCAutoGeek.com for carrying the show. That's great, folks. We really love having you on board. Remember, we want your questions. We've got Jack Telnack, from the former head of design at Ford, coming on. We want to get your questions for him. Go to bit.ly/afterhours. That's bit.ly/afterhours. Send us an email to viewermail@autolinedetroit.tv. Or give us a call. We've got our own Google phone number, which is 1-620-AUTOLIN, if you have all the letters on your phone. If not, it is 1-620-288-6546. Want to thank our volunteers helping us monitor the chat room. Give a shout out to Mud Monster and Rumble Strip. Great having you all here. Remember, we'll post the video of this show shortly after the show is over. We'll have the podcast at the iTunes store tomorrow. Just go to the iTunes store, look for Autoline After Hours. It's free. It'll be up there tomorrow afternoon. And don't forget, you can always get all our shows, including this one, on your smartphone or BlackBerry. Just go to Stitcher, download everything. Go to our website, click it on. It'll show you how to get through there. And you can listen to everything on your phone. And we're going to get started here very quickly.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone, passion for excellence. Chevrolet, the all-new Chevrolet Cruze. Get used to more. And by Hyundai. Experience the 2011 Hyundai Sonata today at HyundaiSonata.com.
Well, thanks for joining us here as we do this every Thursday night, folks. I usually give a shout out to my co-host, Peter DeLorenzo, but the bum's not here this night. He's out in Road America, bombing around the track, having a ball out there. And so good for Peter, and he'll be back here next week. But we've got Drew Winter from Ward's Auto World. Great having you here, Drew.
Great to be here, John.
And Todd Lassa from Motor Trend and Motor Trend Classic Magazine. Great having you here.
Thanks, John. Good to be here.
It's out late over the back of the car.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Drew, you got to put a microphone on so everybody can hear
You've been doing a silent
pontificate
movie
about here on
until
the show. And then joining us later in the show, we've got Jack Telnack, the former head of design at the Ford Motor Company. We're going to have some great design discussion going here. But first, I got to go back to 2 weeks ago. We all took a vacation here at Autoline last week, so we were closed down. But as you'll all recall, we did the Automotive Fantasy Draft 2 weeks ago. That was a great show. Man, we've gotten incredible amount of feedback on that thing. But as you'll remember, we also had a contest so that any of our viewers who happened to pick any of the executives that me or Peter DeLorenzo or Jim Hall or Ed Lapham chose, and we've got prizes to give out. So, Ben, do we have a drum roll?
Not ready.
Okay. And the grand prize winner is Glenn Ellsworth from Fort Edward, New York. He wins the grand prize. And there's a bunch of stuff. Listen to this. He gets 2 Chevy T-shirts, a Genesis Coupe Hot Wheels car, a Hyundai travel mug, a Hyundai all-weather jacket, and a die-cast model of the Chevrolet Volt. Second place went to Jarrett Henshaw from Ontario, Canada. Also got 2 Chevy t-shirts, a Genesis Coupe Hot Wheels car, a travel mug from Hyundai, and a Hyundai hoodie. And third place went to Mario Paredes from New York, New York. The kid's from the city, I can tell already. He got a couple of Chevy t-shirts, a Genesis Coupe Hot Wheels car. Derek Verstegen from Plainfield, Illinois. Hope I didn't butcher your last name too much there, Derek. Also got a couple of Chevy t-shirts and a Hot Wheels Genesis Coupe. And fifth place went to Victor Castaneda Jr. from Buckeye, Arizona. And Derek, or Victor, you get a couple of Chevy t-shirts. But anyway, thank all of you for participating in that. We will do the fantasy draft again at some point in the future because we had a lot of fun with it. But to my guys in the studio here, let's talk about some of the news that's going on right now. And the hot thing seems to be this CAFÉ standard. The Obama administration is proposing 56.2 miles per gallon. I don't know where the .2 came from, but that's the number that's being bandied about. Drew, what do you read into this?
Well, he's trying to, I think, play to both sides. He's got to come up with a big number for his base to make them happy. They were pushing for 62, but he's also got to, he's going to have to deal with the UAW and everyone else. The auto industry is going to say it's a job killer. So I think he's trying to play the middle there. We'll see how he does. But CAR came out, the Center for Automotive Research came out with a report that said at 62 miles per gallon that it was going to send, what you're going to be looking at then, cars were going to have to be like 71 miles per gallon, and then trucks were going to have to be in the 50s, and that was just basically going to kill off pickup trucks and other things. And they were forecasting hundreds of thousands of job losses simply because people were just going to stop buying cars.
And was that the $9,700 hike just for the technology? I think at that highest level, according to CAR, 62 miles per gallon. And I think it actually came
They thought it would add close to 10 grand to the price of a car.
10 grand at the 56.2. And by the way, those decimal marks are the result of the fact that you're looking at 35.5, and each step up recommended is a percentage per year, I believe, isn't it?
Yes,
Percentage
that's right.
increase per
You're
year.
right.
Yeah,
So it comes out to exactly 56.2 if you do 5% per year from 2016 or 2017 through 2025, and then 62 point something. Anyway, so yeah, they're floating the second highest out of 4 different steps. The other thing, you know, the very confusing thing is that the mileage figures you get. You know, when you look at a CAFÉ number, it's not a CAFÉ number, right?
Right.
I mean, it's not just a direct. You have to be more than a mathematician to figure out exactly how it works. They have this
adjusted numbers
S-curve
and
thing now.
unadjusted numbers.
Exactly.
And yada, yada, yada.
Exactly. And the numbers are never quite as high as that.
These are not the adjusted numbers. So the real world fuel economy
Would be
actually
lower.
would be lower.
Right.
But it's still going to be.
For trucks, it would have to be 29 mpg. I remember that number.
It's
still very high.
mind-boggling, and the way they're selling it, I mean, they're selling it to voters, and they do surveys of registered voters and people who don't buy cars, and they're all like, sure, yeah, I'd like to get 60 miles per gallon, and trying to sell it like this is going to be a benefit for consumers when the politicians don't. We're going to be doing a survey on this shortly to put some numbers on it as well, but the constituency out there doesn't understand the impact of the regulations. They have no clue of what 62 miles per gallon means, what kind of sacrifices. Our car is going to be less safe, or you're going to have to go to smaller cars. None of it. It's just a number they're throwing around.
They all talk about taking weight out of the cars as being, kind of the next kind of goal of getting better fuel mileage out of the cars. And this is on top of the fact that you also have still increasing standards, new roof crush standards, pedestrian crash standards. But the other aspect of this, and not to support those 56.2 mile per hour per gallon goals. But if you look at what Europe's doing with CO2, I forget the exact correlation, Drew, maybe you know, but by 2016, the European standard will be pretty high. And if you think about the fact that the entire auto market is globalizing so much, except for pickup trucks, that's going to be the only really indigenous product you can buy at dealers here, 5 or 10 years from now. Everybody's looking at globalization. What will it take to coordinate all these different standards coming out of Europe, coming out of Japan, coming out of China potentially in the next 5 to 10 years anyway?
Well, and it's just crazy when you're trying to globalize and you're comparing. In Europe, you have a highly motivated consumer. When fuel is $8–10 a gallon, they are motivated to buy a fuel-efficient vehicle.
Yeah.
Not so much motivation here when it's $3.50 or $4 a gallon.
Well, precisely. I mean, that's a great point in that you've got, in Europe, you have that high CO2 standard, but you've also had much higher fuel prices for many years, which has been driving the market for diesels especially, and for, say, C cars instead of CD cars as being kind of the
I would even say A and B cars combined with turbo diesels.
Right. Well, I mean, the C car being kind of the mainstream family car in Europe, whereas it's a CD car here, midsize here, compact there, being the high volume segment.
Well, and plus you have things like CO2 taxes in Europe that incentivize things like stop-start systems. So again, consumers will get a stop-start system that will improve fuel economy. Here, stop-start systems don't even show up on the EPA
There's no
test
benefit.
cycle.
Right.
There's no benefit. So here you have
no laboratory benefit.
Yeah,
There is real world.
There is real benefit, but then so again we have antiquated government rules and tests that are, they're setting standards super high at one end, and then they're not offering any sort of incentive or changes to an ancient regulatory system that might encourage more fuel-saving technology, such as stop-start systems, which they're all over Europe. They could bring them in. It's very low cost, but so many automakers are saying, why should we do it? We get no benefit.
Yeah.
They will do it, though. They will do it. Before the decade's out, it's going to be on just about everything in the U.S. market.
There must be a push to get that into the EPA cycle, though, because all these studies I've seen, including the car study, assumes that by the end of the decade you're going to see more stop-start. But if you've ever driven it, it's funny. I drove I drove a stop-start version of the BMW X3, which I drove in the States for its launch, but the launch, starting in the South, in South Carolina and Atlanta, because the factory's in South Carolina, the first ones off the line were the Euro Market X3s, so they gave us the stop-start, and they were obviously looking to see what kind of reaction we'd have. And I could see where there's a lot of concern, if you're a luxury brand, to have that kind of stop-start in a $40 or $50 or $60,000 car or sport utility vehicle that the buyer's probably going to ding the company in the J.D. Power numbers saying, oh, this thing is really, not very smooth when you take off. Then you've got the button that can turn it off anyway, and how many people are going to do that? So.
Well, another thing that came out this week, of course, is that the Detroit 3 automakers are powwowing with the UAW over this, because they know the UAW has a direct line right into the White House. They know that the president will listen to concerns of labor, and the union's got to be concerned about job losses, because 56.2 miles per gallon is going to hurt, especially the truck market, where the Detroit 3 are strong.
Well, again,
so I find it fascinating that here's one advantage of having a union that the transplants don't have.
Yeah, I mean, the car study was talking about literally hundreds of thousands of jobs being lost as people simply stopped buying new vehicles. And if Obama's first priority is jobs, then he has to take, again, this tough position against his own constituency and saying, jobs are more important than climate change right now. So, look, we're going to back off on the fuel economy. I mean, I think that's the only way he can do it. And then, of course, he's going to get lots of...
He'll take a lot of heat.
Yeah, he's going to take
no matter
a lot
what
of
he
heat.
does, he's going to take a lot of heat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Also very interesting, speaking of VW, is it was castigated by General Motors today that put out a release saying, how dare you, Martin Winterkorn, CEO of Volkswagen, talk about a potential sale of Opel going to the Chinese. Keep your big trap shut is essentially what the thing was saying. What did you guys read into that?
Well, I mean, that's kind of life in the big city, isn't it? I mean, I think public, I mean, this kind of stuff goes on behind the scenes all the time. But yeah, I think to come out publicly and just, just really try to undercut an automaker, I mean, or a competitor is that's got to sting.
It's funny, when the whole issue came up a few weeks ago, and it was, I think Der Spiegel perhaps was the first to report it, that GM may be looking at selling Opel again. And this was after, and we've been all through the back and forth when GM was going to sell part of Opel as a result of the bankruptcy a couple of years ago. And then it looked a lot smarter to hold on to it because, what was Chrysler's biggest problem in the last 20 or 30 years? It's that it had no presence in Europe. Well, so now GM's holding on to Opel, and then a few weeks ago the reports come out that GM may be looking to sell Opel again. And the blame I had heard goes directly to Der Spiegel, which doesn't like General Motors very much, and the German government similarly. It seemed like the GM statement this week was trying to make it sound like Winterkorn's statements started this several weeks ago. Although Winterkorn, his people responded by saying, well, he was just responding to a reporter, maybe it was a Der Spiegel reporter, asking him what he thought about selling Opel. His comment was, well, he didn't think that Hyundai would go after it, but maybe a Chinese company would. And
maybe it was an offhand remark. If you look at Steve Ratner's book, who the cars are, went through a lot of that stuff in detail, and I went through his book again and found a couple of clear passages there where he said that the reason they didn't want to sell Opel back 2 years ago or whenever was they thought it was way underpriced. Mm-hmm. They just thought this is just way too cheap. Mm-hmm. And the CEO of what was Ed Whitaker at that time said, look, guys, let's just hold tight on this and wait a couple of years until the price goes up, until the economy improves, until we can get more money for this thing, and then let's try to sell it. Well, lo and behold, 2 years passes and suddenly we're hearing these rumors. So I think that's what's happening.
Well, the thing about Opel is that there are two ways to fix it if you hold on to it. One is to increase volume. The other is to increase the average transaction prices on the cars, and to kind of bring back the kind of status that Opel had in the 60s or 70s when it was truly a German Buick. And that's kind of how they're trying to position Opel now. GM's talking about how Chevrolet is becoming its international brand and that it's going to become big in Europe, which would make, and it's also trying to internationalize Cadillac again, which again would put Opel precisely where Buick is in the United States. But those are big problems to overcome. The other interesting thing is that, Ackerson apparently didn't like what Winterkorn was saying about his company, and there's a little bit of getting back what you put out. I mean, if you consider what Ackerson said about Lincoln a few weeks ago, that Lincoln.
Well, not only that, he's trashed Toyota and Mercedes. So I mean,
you learn in this business very quickly that if you work for one of the companies, and even the PR people will tell you this, they'll say, if someone's having trouble with whatever recalls or quality issues or making money or whatever, you don't trash them if you're a competitor.
You say there, but for the grace of God.
And that's
it will come back and hit you, and it has hit Ackerson.
Right, because everybody gets their turn in the barrel, in this town, and that's always been the standing rule as I know it was, hey, it's going to be you in a couple of years, so you better keep your mouth shut.
And here's an outsider who worked for, cell phone company, right? And that there they don't mind trashing each other. That's kind of the way of doing business.
Yeah.
Hey, this is a good place to take a break. We need to take a commercial break and then get Jack Telnack up on here. So, Ben, let's thank our friends at Hyundai. The 6th generation of the Hyundai Sonata is taking the industry by storm, and no wonder. It offers a fluidic design theme that gives it a strikingly modern, coupe-like exterior design, and yet the interior provides the roominess of a full-size car as measured by the EPA. The Sonata also provides an eco-friendly interior with soy-based foam for the seats. Put it all together with Hyundai's strong reliability and value proposition, and you've got yourself a really compelling package. Check it all out at HyundaiSonata.com. The former Vice President of Design for the Ford Motor Company. It's great having you here, Jack.
That's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me, John.
I mean, you've seen all kinds of changes in this business.
Well, I've only been in it for I was only in it for 40 years.
In fact, one thing that I find fascinating is you were born and raised in Dearborn, right?
Exactly, yes.
You're the only person I know, I think, in the entire industry who was actually born in a town where the company was headquartered and went all the way to the top in the profession.
Well, it's beyond that, too, because I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you, but I was actually born in the Ford Hospital. I mean,
How perfect is that?
Yeah, really. I mean, I couldn't draw a Chevy if I tried. They actually said I came out with a Ford Oval stamped on me as a baby, but it worked out very well. And I had a Ford scholarship out in California, too, and they hired me right out of school. So it was.
So you went to Art Center in Pasadena?
Right, yeah. And I can still remember as a kid, as a 16-year-old, I'd be sitting on the serpentine wall at the Ford test track in Dearborn.
Which is still there today, the brick wall?
Still there, and we'd go out after school and just see what they were testing out there, and couldn't wait to run back to school the next morning and tell all our buddies, hey, I saw that new 52 Ford, I think it was a 52 with a clear plastic roof on it, and it was really exciting things back in those days, so it had to.
They don't let anybody sit on the wall these days.
Not anymore, no, I'm sure they don't. But my
They
father
have
used
people
to
with shotguns that take care of that.
Oh, really? But my father used to take me to the old Ford Rotunda. You remember?
I remember the
big
Rotunda.
display building? It came from the Chicago fair that Henry Ford brought back in, and I can remember I was 4 years old and being in there seeing the 1941 Lincoln Continental. Still remember the car, burgundy with a tan convertible top, 3/4 top on it, and I just fell in love with that car. Unfortunately, my father couldn't afford one. He bought a burgundy 41 Ford instead of the Continental. But I think it had a very strong impact on me, and certainly gave me a direction for my life.
The Rotunda actually had an impact on me because I remember at Christmas time they always did some big shindig there.
Sure.
And I mean, I was extremely young. I must have been 4 or 5 years old at the time. But they had sort of Ford's vision of the future, this very sort of futuristic city with cars running around. And I mean, I was just blown away by it.
Oh, it was great.
And then the place burned to the ground. And I remember being shocked as a little kid that the Rotunda was gone.
I had tears in my eyes because I used to drive past it every evening on the way home from the design center. And I can still remember the smoldering ashes and the limestone structure that just collapsed in there. It was very traumatic for me. It really was, because I spent a lot of time there. I used to go out there as a kid during World War II when they stopped the displays, because it was all the Rotunda was converted to an office building for war work.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, and I can remember riding my bike there and walking inside and walking around the whole Rotunda to see if there was still some car displays, and all there were desks and people in there working for the war effort. And I just knew, someday there had to be cars coming back in, and I think they finally reopened it around maybe 52 or 53, and started the displays back again, which I was thrilled about.
And that was right across the street from the original Ford Motor Company headquarters, which was this very beautiful, I think, Italianate building with the red tile roof.
Exactly,
and that's gone. In fact, there's no trace of that building ever having been there before.
Right, yeah, that was right on the edge of the Ford Rouge complex.
Right.
Yeah, on Schaefer Road, yeah.
And I knew that because I worked at the Rouge one summer. And
so did I.
That's where I got me an education.
I'll bet.
I learned a whole lot in that place.
I spent one summer in the glass plant there.
I worked in the steel mill, in the hot bar mill.
Oh, great. Well, I remember when I was there, it was in 55, because they were building the 55 T-Birds on the same line with the 55 Fords. It was just so much fun. I would have time in between breaks and all to run over the main production line and see them coming down the line. And in those days, that was pretty exciting with all the wild color combinations they had. It was a
So
great
what
place
got
to
you into design?
I don't know.
Well, I mean,
No,
obviously
no,
you'd been
no,
thinking about, you went to
really,
art center, you were
no,
thinking about this way early.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was always drawing cars as a kid in school, and I knew I either wanted to get into automotive design or architecture, and the automotive really got me. And the strangest part about it is here I'm born and raised in Detroit, and all the big three are in Detroit, and there were really no design schools in Detroit. I had to go all the way to California. Not then, no. And I can remember my dad set me up with an appointment to meet some design people at Ford, and I went over and met Alex Tremulous, who was a really,
kidding.
Oh, yeah, and Alex was the guy who designed the Tucker and Duesenbergs, Kaiser Frazer, if you remember those.
Yes.
And he was running the advanced studio at Ford at the time. I also met some people over at GM. I met Homer Legassi at GM.
Oh, I remember Homer, because he later taught at CCS.
Yes. Oh, yeah, and he joined us at Ford later on. But I saw him at GM in the old GM Design Center, just off West Grand Boulevard. But
Which is now part of CCS.
right, what a great place to Well, that's a really nice setup. But Alex told me, he said, well, look, kid, if you want to get in this business, I brought in a couple of little sketches. He said, you really have to perfect this a little bit. And he recommended the Art Center in California. It was in Los Angeles at the time. Now it's in Pasadena, of course. But and I did, and I came back, and as a matter of fact, Alex came out there and hired me. And I said, this is it. So he really gave me some great direction on that. And then I worked for him in the Ford Advanced Studio. And I joined him in 1958. When we were working, the first project I worked on was the 60 Ford.
Now, if I remember right, I thought you told me a long time ago you did like the taillight bezel or something like that.
Yeah, I did. That's probably, we were doing grill textures and taillight bezels and all those sorts of details. And but yeah, that was a very exciting time to get in the automobile business.
Sure, that was when America had this can-do attitude. Can do anything.
Absolutely. No feasibility problems. There were no crash requirements,
and annual styling change, so everything was getting changed every year.
It was amazing. I was just talking to a friend of mine about that today, because we were talking about the 60 Ford and how it changed from 59 to 60. And it was really influenced back then by the 59 Chevy.
Impala
with the
cat eye taillights and the wings practically off the back.
Horizontal.
Still one of the most beautiful cars.
Yeah, they did a great job on that. And I understand when Ford saw that, that inspired the 64. We say, hey, we better get on the ball, because the 59 was very boxy, and so it was a total departure from that when they got into the 60. And the 60, by the way, this is a little bit of history, was the widest American vehicle ever built. I'm not sure. I think it was 72 inches wide. Wow. As I understand,
some cars are not even that long.
I know, really. and they actually, I understand, I haven't seen it, but they said in Tennessee it was so wide that they actually put running lights on the backs of the fin, the horizontal fins that were on there, because that was the widest point of the car, the tailing edge of the fin back there.
Wow.
And they required that in Tennessee. So I never saw one, but they said they did that.
So you're competing with Chevy and Pontiac, right? I mean, the wide track Pontiac probably.
Yeah, well, we didn't back in those days. We didn't know what wide track was, I think.
Okay.
But
well, that was DeLorean's marketing genius, or Bunky Knudsen, I should say. Put a stamp on it. Hey, if we're going to make them wide, let's market the fact.
Yeah, and it was good. But they were the first ones, one of the first to get the proper tread to sheet metal relationship.
Yeah.
So we eliminated overhang, and I mean lateral overhang on the side of the cars. It was where the wheels were always tucked under, and nobody noticed it back in those days.
Well,
really figured it out.
The easiest way to notice that is if you see a Canadian Pontiac from that era, because they were built on the Chevy chassis, and they don't have that relationship.
That's right.
So if you could park one of those next to a similar American version. But that's the competitor we should be talking about.
Yeah, that's right.
But it was easier to do those faster turnarounds back then, right? Because you only had a handful of cars. You had all these guys, and you had
not even a handful.
This is it. Yeah. We didn't have the full line of cars, and it was just sheet metal. We weren't changing the underbodies and the frames. So yeah, it was no problem at all.
But that's an advantage of body on frame.
It was, and matter of fact, that 64. Hate to keep talking about the 64, but it was an 18-month project. You don't do a car in 18 months today.
Listen,
you really could in those days.
But that was a great looking Ford that really stands out in that era.
It was a dramatic departure from anything else in the industry. Very fast windshield on it. and that chrome line that went from the front fender all the way back to the low horizontal fin on the tail of the car is a very clean car.
Yeah.
It wasn't that well received in the marketplace, I think. It wasn't bad, but we immediately changed then for 61. All new sheet metal again in 61. Went back to the round taillights because everybody said a Ford had to have round taillights.
You know, it's funny you say 18-month car because today, and I'm not exaggerating at all, if you want to change tires on a car, I don't mean like us getting out and changing the spare. I mean, as a program manager, if you go, oh, I want to change these tires,
Yeah.
18 months. To do all the durability and go through
Well, sure.
purchasing and yeah, blah, 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 blah.
Well, and just
18
all the
months
design
just to
param- yeah.
change the tires on a
Yeah,
car.
well, the design parameters and all the jounce effects and everything you have to, and all the restrictions on that, which
Right.
we've really gotten around because there were so many old rules that we had to go by until we said, well, wait a minute, BMW and the Europeans are getting this great tread and great stance to their cars. Why can't we? Well, they have rounder flanges on them. Well, can't we make rounder flanges on our fenders to accommodate that so we don't cut our tires on them? You know, but I learned a lot, again, when I was 16 about, I think about basic bodies because although I liked the 41 Continental, I could never afford one as a kid, but I eventually bought a 41 Mercury convertible and chopped and channeled it, got my torches down at a pawn shop on Michigan Avenue for 20 bucks. As a matter of fact, I still have one mounted on a plaque that the guys gave me back at the company when I retired. And took 6 inches out of the firewall of the car and lowered the whole body on the frame, and I could only get the seat down so far, so when I lowered the steering column, the steering wheel, it would rub on my pant leg. As a matter of fact, I drove it to California to school at 16, well 17, sorry, I 17 by the time I finished it. I actually wore a hole in my pant leg from the steering wheel, but I was cool. It had a 3/4 white Carson top on it and naturally prime paint. Metallic prime paint, I might add. It was always a little bit advanced there, too.
What do you think Continental needs or Lincoln needs to do now? I mean, it's Cadillac has made, it's created a new design vocabulary. It's really recreated itself. It seems like Lincoln's still struggling. What can it do, or what do you think it needs to do?
I think they could really use a new Mark, maybe a Mark 9, to get it started. A good hot two-door Mark to bring some traffic into the showroom. They've got some great product coming out. I've been over to the design center recently, but I would really vote for a Mark. I think a Mark would set that place on fire.
Just to set the tone for where they got to take the
You
brand.
get the halo effect over the whole brand. Get that going first, because there's so many wonderful design cues that we have on the Mark that can be used in a new contemporary interpretation of the Mark. And I think that would really set the stage for it. So it's something to talk about. Get some real attention focused on the car, on the whole line, on the whole Lincoln line.
But you know, it seems to me that, you know, every 4 or 5 years, Ford appoints a new design director for Lincoln, and that designer wants to take them in this direction, and it never works for whatever reasons. It may not even be the designer's fault. Yeah. And then, oh no, that didn't work. Now we got to go charging down in another direction. How do you set a long-term vision? Cadillac seems to have it, and even though, you know, the new CTS or the current CTS is very different from the original one, you still go, yeah, but that's a CTS.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because you can't hold a theme. I think you have to develop a theme and then stick with it and evolve it. And I think that Lincoln hasn't been doing that. They've been jumping a little bit and trying new design approaches, and they really have to hold on to the theme. And this happens with a lot of different car lines, but once you have the strong graphics on the car, work with it, evolve it, and do contemporary interpretations of it.
What kind of graphics does it need? What would you do?
Well, I would go back to I don't know exactly what I would do. First off, I think that the split bow weight grille that they have in a Lincoln now is dramatic. But I think it can be refined. I think you'll see that some of the new versions coming out will be a refinement of that, and it's a very strong Lincoln feature.
Good. So they're revolving it, not just throwing it away.
Right. Yes. And based on what I saw recently, yes. And that's Lincoln. Nobody else can do that. They own that, and hold on to it and develop it. And you can work with different proportions on it, but you know that it does work. And I think they're. I would like to see, if I was doing an all-new Lincoln, say a new town car, if you will, reduced in size, of course, I'd love to go back to, say, the 61 Continental with the slab sides, which doesn't sound good, but I mean, it's very dramatic. It was a very elegant, one of the most elegant Lincolns ever built, in my opinion. And I could see doing a number of variations on that theme. And it's Lincoln, and everybody would know it's a Lincoln.
Well, the 64 think it is the convertible Lincoln, 64 Lincoln convertible. I think that was like with the suicide door.
Four-door with suicide doors, yeah.
67.
61?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite cars of all time.
Yeah, matter of fact, at the Detroit Auto Show this year, there must have been a half a dozen 61 Lincoln Customs there. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, they're very hot these days.
They were gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's easy to do. I mean, if I was there, I think I'd sure take a shot at that.
But is there a way to do that sort of design and yet retain the 41 style grille? Because the problem is Lincoln actually, just before that grille, had tried on some of its models a kind of 1961 style grille.
Yeah.
And it's almost
Yeah.
too,
With the
it's too
egg crate.
clean. It's,
Yes.
it doesn't
It was
work with modern design.
nondescript. It didn't say much. Yeah.
So could you combine that current grille
That's
style
a
with
good thought. I'd like to have a shot at that. Yeah. And one of the nice parts about the 61 too, it was a very airfoil front end on it, and so was
Yeah.
the 61 T-Bird. And
Right.
and yeah, very modern. And yeah, you could work that again, especially with all the new. We could even meet the bumper restrictions with that, and with all the new technology that's available to us
Right.
today, you could do that.
Well, the other question, though, about the
Yeah.
current times is that you were leading Ford design when everybody was heading toward front-wheel drive.
Yes.
I mean, even the Mustang was going to be front-wheel drive. It became the Probe instead
Hard to
because
believe.
of
Yeah,
the
right.
great.
That was close.
That was very
It was close.
I hear it's very close, right? So, can you do? How important is the dash to axle relationship? And does Lincoln, in doing, say, a new Mark 9, does it need to be on a rear drive platform? Can they do it front wheel drive? What do you think there?
I think you could, well, I would go all-wheel drive, and I think this dash-to-axle relationship is very key in the overall proportioning of the car. But even more important than that is the height of the cowl, especially if you want platform flexibility. You know, everybody talks about platform flexibility today in the industry. That isn't anything new. Do you know how many cars we got off platforms in the Ford Motor Company these years? You know,
The Mustang came off the Falcon.
The Mustang came up, yeah, the Mustang came off the Falcon, and then the later Mustang, we got the '79 Mustang. Came off the Fairmont.
Right.
We took a Lincoln, we took a T-Bird, we took a Cougar off it. This isn't anything new. We've been doing that for years. But no, but we can still get some great Lincoln.
But cowl height, you say, is
cows,
critical.
yeah.
So you can get.
If I want platform flexibility, my theory back there when I was designing cars was, hey guys, and working with the engineers, give me a low cowl and I'll give you a hot car. I can always raise the cowl if I want to do a larger sedan or an SUV off it or anything like that, but I can never bring the cowl down once it's locked in.
Yeah.
It's the most expensive
hard
part of the
point.
car.
It is a hard point.
You're locked in. You can't do anything with it.
That's the problem with the Dodge Challengers, that they had to go with the high cowl that the 300 and the Dodge Charger have.
Sure.
And so the Challenger's way longer, way bigger than a Ford Mustang or even a Chevy Camaro, because they had to get the proportions right. If they were using that high cowl, otherwise it would be a stubby looking car. So.
Hey, time out. We got to take a quick commercial break here, and then we'll get back to this discussion. Ben, we got to thank our friends at Bridgestone right now. Bridgestone is featuring its third generation of run-flat tires with groundbreaking new technology. Current run-flat tires can offer peace of mind for consumers, but the added mass and the stiffer sidewalls can compromise ride comfort and fuel efficiency. The new third-generation Bridgestone run-flat tires reduce heat and improve performance and ride comfort. Whether you're a program manager in the industry or just looking for a set for your personal car, check it out at bridgestonetire.com. So I thought Todd raised a really good point, front drive versus rear drive.
Yes.
I can't see Lincoln ever getting to be taken seriously if it only does front drive. And I'm not sure even all-wheel drive is the answer to get the right proportions on a car.
Well, I think we could get the proportions I believe we could get the right proportions with all-wheel drive. And proportion is key to the whole equation here. That's all there is to it. You know, there are three basic ingredients on a car. If you want a hot car, proportion, proportion, proportion. But we could do it with front or wheel. But I would go for all-wheel drive, because let's bring it up with the big guys now and be more global with this car and much more sophisticated with all-wheel drive. But again, start with dash to front axle. And work the package.
Low cowl.
Low cowl. However, I will admit, and because the guys will kill me, They would have killed me back then because I was always preaching, lower the cowl. Give me a low cowl, I'll give you a hot car. On the 79 Mustang, we actually had to raise the cowl a little bit, maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches, just to get some slope to the hood, because we were working on a I know it sounds sacrilegious.
It was the Fairmont.
It was a Fairmont cowl, so we had to raise it just to get some slope. And we pulled the windshield as far forward as we could get it, and then we faked it a little bit with a blacked out cowl air intake area just to make it look as if it was a faster windshield. But it worked. It really, because the 79 Mustang was really.
It saved the Mustang.
It saved Mustang, and it was the first aero attempt that we ever had at doing cars. We went a slope black front end on the car, and it was people when it first came out thought it was a very European effect.
Well, you
And
had just gotten back from
I just
Europe,
got back
right?
From Europe when we did the cars, and I can remember walking in the studio because I had the Mustangs in one of the studios that I had then, and we were just starting on the program, and the guys had a whole board full of sketches there, and they said, "Well, which one do you want, Mr. Telnack?" And I said, "No, which one do you want? You're the designers. Which ones are you really excited about? I'll go away, I'll come back in another day or so, and then you tell me which ones, you have them. These are all your sketches on this wall. Tell me which ones you want." And that's how we selected the 79 Mustang. One of the guys had it. And then when these were sketches, then they blew it up to full size, and they lost it. And I said, "Wait a minute, what are you doing?" They said, "Well, because manufacturing wants this, and they want the cowl and the belt line to
kiss of
slope
death.
this way." And I said, "Well, no. I said, "Just take that sketch and blow it up full size and retain everything that you have on there and hold all the excitement that you had in that." And they did it, and that's how the car started. And that was a tough job on a Fairmont platform.
Right.
It really was. But the car worked. It really worked for us.
Before we run out of time, I want to ask you some aero questions.
And he's asking that because on the cover of this month's awards is a big question about
Yeah, is aero gonna
aerodynamics killing styling.
Yeah, and we do these stories apparently every few years because I interviewed you for the same story about 15 years ago.
I remember that,
You
right.
gave me a tremendous quote back then where you said, "Look, birds are aerodynamic,
Right.
and nobody has trouble distinguishing an eagle from a canary."
Right. They can all fly.
Yeah.
Right.
Great
That is
quote.
the line.
But my concern, we were talking here earlier about fuel economy, a 60 mpg fuel fleet economy.
Right.
I mean, it sounds like we're heading for all canaries here. I mean, is it possible, if we're really talking about cars getting 50, 60, 70 miles per gallon, trucks getting 50 miles per gallon, can you really differentiate them, or are they going to all start to look like, different sized Camrys?
I believe.
Or Priuses?
Fair enough. I believe aero has never been a restriction for me. As a matter of fact, aero gave us, and I really got into aero when I was in Europe for 4 years running our studios over there, because we were much more concerned about fuel economy in Europe back in those days. I think aero gives us a lot of freedom. It gives a designer a real impetus to it's the only chance a designer has to make a real honest contribution to fuel economy, because if we bend the sheet metal more efficiently, we can do it, and nobody can argue with it, and it gives us a rationale for the design of the car. But because of this bird, the canary and eagle comparison, no, there's an incredible amount of flexibility and freedom there in design, and it's a matter of working with the engineers in a collaborative way to develop it and make the design work and meet all the aero requirements. And fine, if I can make a contribution to fuel economy, we'll do it. But I think we can get the differential. I've never had a problem with aero. And I think one of the important points here is we got so involved with aero in design that we controlled the design center controlled aero in the Ford Motor Company. The aerodynamics people
that's
were
right.
working
I'd
for
forgotten
us.
that, right.
And they were not, I shouldn't say for, they were working with us. It was a collaborative effort again, and it really helped us. And I think we really, and the 79 Mustang was a good example. That was the first slant back front end that we had in Ford. It was aero. Then that worked us into the 83 T-Bird, which was a very aero-looking car. And it wasn't just looking aero, but it was aero. And we convinced management that aero was saleable. By the way, we had aero way back with the Lincoln Zephyrs in the Ford Motor Company, but we wouldn't advertise aero back then because Chrysler had the airflow before we did, and it had a negative connotation. So
the airflow didn't sell well. That's why.
It didn't sell well. Yeah,
But it didn't look all that good.
Visually it wasn't that good. It wasn't an exciting car. The emotion wasn't there. It was the wrong kind of emotion with the car. And so we had our Lincoln Zephyr. I wasn't there at the time. I want to make this clear. This was 1937. But our Lincoln Zephyr was more aerodynamic quick than that, but we wouldn't tell anybody about it, is the way the word goes. But after that, so we got the Mustang, the 79 Mustang, the 83 T-Bird, and that really paved the way for the Taurus. And then we went all out for Aero. And our management was convinced at that time, hey, Aero does sell. But we had to sell management on it first before they'd go that way. But at the time, when we did the Taurus, Phil Caldwell was running the company, and we were losing millions of dollars.
Millions is kind.
Yeah, right, yeah. And I can still remember Phil coming into the studio as we were developing the clay models of the Taurus. This was the 86 Taurus, and asking us, and he was not necessarily a car guy, he was more of a finance guy, but a great manager, and he would come to us and say, do you really think you've reached far enough? I mean, normally
he's pushing
top management would come in and say, hold it, you've gone too far with this, pull this design back a little bit, and he would push us even more. But I think he had the confidence in us because I worked with Phil over in Europe, and we had some successes in Europe with the Granadas and some of the cars we were doing over there with Aero. And he believed in us, he trusted us, and he was able to do it.
Well, and then you had already the T-Bird under your belt, and what was it, the Mark IV, too? Which was...
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it was that was the Mark 7, the Mark 7.
Okay.
Yeah, then we got the...
Yeah, what am I thinking?
Yeah,
Mark IV was back in the 60s.
Yeah, right, the Mark 7, well, can I tell you just a little story about that?
Yeah.
When we were doing the T-Bird, we were going through market research. I wasn't a great advocate or a fan of market research. I told our market research guys it was a black art, and they really hated me for that. But anyway, I could talk about research.
Well, you're right. Yeah,
but we were showing. We had some research right at the in our rotunda at the design center, and we had several T-Birds there. This is for the 83 T-Bird, but they were all very boxy. We just couldn't get out of there. But we were already started on the Mark 7, and so the research was going no place. People were just really disappointed. And I said, hey, hang on just a minute. I told the guy, bring the Mark 7 out here, take the hood ornament off it, and turn the car in a 3/4 front view so he couldn't see the tire on the rear deck, the tire shape on the rear deck. Roll that car in. We rolled it in, and the respondents just leapt out of their chairs. They said, yeah, that's a T-Bird. And it had a slightly slanted grill on the thing and all. And so that really started the 83 T-Bird, and the doors and the roof, the whole body central was very similar, and that kicked off the program. That's when we got out of the boxy look at the T-Bird. So the Mark helped us in that.
The market research, though, must have been what had Ford keep the LTD2 around for a couple of years after the Taurus, because even though you guys were pretty groundbreaking with that car, someone in management must have said, well, we better keep the old style car around just in case.
I think there may have been some cost issues and investment issues walking around there too. They just didn't want to put the money in to change it at that time.
Okay.
And then when they finally got around to it, we went much softer on it. But that kind of stood out.
So I mean, everybody remembers the first Taurus as this enormous success, but it actually started out kind of slow. People were at first kind of scared of it.
It was very controversial.
Very controversial, yeah. And I can remember our competitors across town. Matter of fact, Lee Iacocca, was saying things like, well, here they're doing those jelly bean cars and potato shapes and all this sort of thing. And all I would say is, hey, hang on. I said, you guys are going to follow us. You'll just watch. And when we market researched that car, it was off to a slow start in market research. The research people were really nervous about it. As a matter of fact, we had just a clean front end with a floating oval. We had no grill texture on the car. Yeah. And we actually had to go through an exercise in market research for the marketing people with a grill texture on the front of the Taurus. And it went through the research, and it didn't do too much. But the man who made the final decision on that, whether we did the clean front end or the grill texture, was Bill Ford.
Really?
And Bill Ford, and I'll never forget that meeting. We sat in there, and everybody was kind of tensed up and waiting for that final decision, because he had the final say-so on the cars back then. And he said, yeah, I like that one. I about leapt out of my seat and kissed him. I said, boy, that is spot on. But he always had an eye for design. He really did. He knew. He just had that second sense.
That's interesting.
Well, that's right, because people were worried about the engine would be cooled without the slats and all sorts of crazy stuff.
You gotta have a grill. No, you don't.
But the whole car was done well. And Lou Veraldi, of course, ran that program and did a brilliant job of it.
The sun rises and sets on Lou Veraldi. Well, unfortunately, it really set this time. He's no longer with us. But Lou and I worked together in Europe. on the first Ford Fiesta. And that Lou was the kind of an engineer that just walked through walls. He just made it happen. We spoke the same language. When it came time to do the Taurus, we said, you know, that's where we really got great stance to the car. We got those wheels out to the sheet metal and flush side glass on the car, which was always impossible to do. We were the first ones here to do it. And people said, well, but Lou just told the engineers, just do it.
And there was one other thing, too. You guys did a station wagon version of it, and you did a separate body side aperture so that you could get the back doors and the proportions right, and even did a second rear suspension just for the wagon.
Just for the wagon, yes.
Which nobody would do these days, not in this town.
Yeah. But it really sold, and it was exciting. And I'll never forget when we introduced that car in Los Angeles, and Phil Caldwell was just getting ready to retire, so we introduced it just before he retired on a soundstage in California. I don't know if you were out there.
I was not there, no, but I heard
about
all
that,
about
though.
it.
It was the most spectacular.
Over the top.
It was over the top. Yeah, we had the three turntables up on a platform draped with circular drapes around them, and then the lights came on, and the music started, and they raised the curtains, and the car started spinning, and the people came up. All the media people were in there, walking over the stage, and then down into the dining room for dinner. And it was all done in a space theme. I mean, it was spectacular. It really was. But it worked.
Hey, we got to take another commercial break here, and then we're going to come back and do rapid fire and get some of the questions from the audience here. But Ben, now we've got to thank our friends at Chevrolet. The Chevrolet Cruze is the car that is taking the world by storm. And a key reason is all the equipment that it offers. A driver information center, a USB port, ambient LED backlighting on the dashboard, remote start with a MyLink app, 2 accessory power outlets, one in front and one in the back for the rear passengers, OnStart, turn-by-turn directions, free for the first 6 months. Whew, there's just too much to list here. And you can check it all out at Chevrolet.com/cruise. Okay, it's time to get to rapid fire. Ben, let's bring that up. My favorite part is when you hear the shell casing start to hit the floor. That's my best part of rapid fire. Okay, the first question comes from Oak Cabin 44. He says, please ask Jack why car designers put the gas fuel filler neck on the right rear corner of a car. Everyone that has it hates it. You have to walk around the car to fill the tank, and it's hard to get to many gas pumps.
We've had them on the rear of the car. We've had them on the right side, on the left side. They're on. I can't tell you exactly why they're on the right side at the moment, but.
Is there any rhyme or reason or rules or regulations? Or?
No, I tend to agree with them because I always have to walk around to the other side of the car to put fuel in my car now. I think probably one of the best gas filler caps, so if I may, was on Cadillac when they had it underneath the tail light. You pressed a button and put it under the tail light. I don't know if you ever heard the story of how that happened.
No.
Well, they said Harley Earl was showing a clay model of a Cadillac. I think it was probably about maybe 41 or 42, someplace around there, and. He forgot, this is a clay model, he forgot to scribe in an area for the gas cap, the filler door. And one of the top guys in the company said, well, where's the filler on this car? And he was quick enough to say, it's under the taillight. And he said, well, how would you do that? He said, we just press this reflex button. And boy, right away, he got the modelers to work on it. And the next day, he was able to show a gas cap under there. But it was just because somebody asked the question, and that's how it happened, which I thought was kind of...
That is a great story. Will asks, how does wind noise relate to aerodynamics and styling? For example, does wind noise tend to be the result of emphasizing styling over aerodynamics?
No, I really believe that styling and aerodynamics, or design and aerodynamics, work together, and we're always working to reduce wind noise. So we don't cause wind noise, we try to eliminate wind noise with design, with proper design.
DC Auto Geek says, let's get to the real question. What do you know about where Lincoln is headed? If you know nothing, where would you take them?
Well, we talked about that a little bit in the program, and I'd still go for probably a Mark 9 and just a great four-door sedan, and I would see a strong influence of the '61 Lincoln in that if I had a chance to get at that again. A contemporary version of it, of course.
KJ Cujo asks, when people say, I had a 57 Chevy or a 57 Ford, what are they referring to? Bel Air, Fairlane?
Yeah, and those I've always, of course, I've always supported Ford on that, but I will admit that the '57 Chevy Bel Air was a great-looking car also. Yeah, and they seem to be holding up well now. And
Ford outsold Chevy that year.
we did outsell them. We had probably more drama to our car.
Yeah.
But I've got to be honest. I think the Chevy then was a cleaner car, and it has more lasting value.
But the Bel Air was just a trim level, wasn't it?
Well, it was a trim level, yeah. But the
They only had
basic-
one body
Right,
style.
one body
Yeah,
style.
right,
But
yeah.
the same would have been for Fairlane. Fairlane was a trim level, or no?
It was, yeah, because yes.
Okay, I think that's what he's getting at.
Okay.
Goggles Pisano says, what do you think of the 1974 to 78 Mustang II design?
I try not
You
to.
were in Europe.
I tried. Yeah.
I was out of town. What does it mean?
It's those other guys who did that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
try
yeah,
not
yeah.
to think about it.
You work on the Capri back then? The Capri?
Yes, over in
European
Europe
Capri?
I did.
Right,
yes. Yes.
right, the European
Right.
Capri.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
That was a
I,
cool
I would,
plastic,
I would
yeah.
mention that anytime anybody mentions the Mustang.
Well, yeah, but I think then the second generation Capri, I had a black JPS Special over there,
Yeah.
which
Ooh,
was really
nice.
a cool car. Yes.
Okay, here's another one. 007 Mitch W. says, this isn't a trick question, he says. How is it that some cars just look great, like the 61 Continental or Volvo Amazon? I don't know that one.
Oh, I don't know.
Anyway, he says, these are unlikely lookers. What is it about? I think you got to it before. What is it that when you look at a car, you just go, wow, that is so good?
I call it, a car has to have that ingredient X, that emotion that people look at and they say, I don't have to have it, I want it. And that's something that's
And it's proportion?
That's where the design comes in. Oh, it starts with proportion, but then great surface development. You have to understand line, form, shape, details, graphics, and when all of those items come together,
Then it's magic.
then it is, and it's that magic that the designer has to put in the car to make it work.
Amazon was a P144, I think, wasn't it? I think that was an.
Oh, is that it?
really?
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard it referred to as the Amazon, though.
I see a couple different. Yeah, it's one of those deals where there's different names depending on where it was sold or
Yeah.
trim level or whatever.
Goggle says, okay, new question for Mr. Telnack. Is it overkill for the big three to all go retro with their pony cars? Of course, the designers of those cars would say they're not retro.
Right.
Yeah. And, although it had nothing to do with the latest Mustang or the Camaro, I don't think they're that retro, really. I think they're evolutionary, and they're picking up design cues from the originals. And I think Camaro did a great job with it. And I think the Mustang is, you can tell it. This is important because you can really
100 yards away, you know.
You know a Camaro and you know a Mustang. That's all there is to it.
Challenger, too.
Absolutely.
Same
yes.
thing.
Yes.
Hey, we got a bunch of phone calls coming in. Ben, let's get to the first one of them.
Hi, this is Austin from Greenville, South Carolina. I just wanted to ask your guest today is if the Ford Start concept shown in China will show off Ford's new design strategy for the world. I noticed that the 2013 Taurus has a similar front end grafted on this time, so I was just wondering. Thank you. Bye.
Are you familiar with that concept
very
car?
definitely, yes. Matter of fact, I sat in it here before it went to China to the show.
You get over to Ford a lot, then.
Yeah, whether they want me to or not. Yeah, I can't keep my nose out of it.
That's cool.
But, no, but Jay's been very good about it too, and inviting me in and to see. We have meetings there periodically. But no, I think the cleanliness of the car will be adapted to a number of the models that they're doing. But that
Here it is up on the screen
Oh, right.
now.
Okay. Yeah. And I think the very clean roof on it, the fast DLO. Will have a strong influence on a number of the Ford products coming up. This is probably cleaner than a lot of the things we have today, too. Very
very
simple shapes.
And what I loved about this car is this is where they showed off the 3-cylinder engine for the first time, too,
yeah.
which I'm intrigued by.
And again, look at that wheel. Look at the wheel in proportion to the body. It's very good. Yeah.
Okay, Ben, let's bring in another phoner.
I was just Dan Smith, Durham, North Carolina. It seems to me as though a very high percentage of Mr. Telnack's project cars or concepts simply got aced out or canned. What's the deal? Ford leaves an awful lot of their stuff on the table or sends it to the crusher. A lot of their concepts were really cool and never went into production. What's up?
Yeah, what's the deal?
Yeah, great question. Yeah,
You're still scratching your head over that too, huh?
I was asking that same question throughout my whole career with the Ford Motor Company. What's up? Why aren't we doing these cars? Because I think, strangely enough, I think we had a strong influence on some of our competitors and some of the cars that they did after we worked on it. As a matter of fact, we had. One of the hottest concept cars I think we did at our Ghia studio in Turin, Italy, was the Focus. Had nothing to do with the Ford Focuses on the road, but that's where the name came from. It was a little two-seater, and I think that had a strong influence on the Porsche Boxster. No question about it. Oh yeah, because we were out about 2 years before the Boxster came out, and I was talking to Lepine.
Pininfarina?
No. The Porsche designer at the time.
Oh. It's Maurer now, right?
Yeah,
Maurer,
but before him. Yeah. Anyway, and because we had the center exhaust coming out of it and all, and really, I think.
That rings a bell.
Yeah,
I seem to remember that car now.
Yeah, we had little Nerf bars around instead of bumpers on the thing, and there's little dot tail lights on it and all. But the basic shape and the silver car, even the color of the interior, I think was picked up by the box. You can't say they're stealing or anything like that. We're all influenced by everything we see, but we did it. We did a concept and they did the real car. More power to them. They did it. But and I think another car we did that we introduced at the Geneva show was a fastback Aston Martin Lagana Vignale. I don't know if you remember that one. The name was longer than the car. And I can still remember Bob Lutz walking up to me behind me in the show. He was already with Chrysler at the time. And he said, "That is such a great car." And I said, "Yeah, I agree." And it wasn't long after that that the Maybach came out and had some of those features on it. And I was kicking myself, saying, "Why didn't I push harder in the company?" I've said that to myself many times in the company. Why didn't I push harder? I still dream about design and thinking I should have pushed harder for a number of these cars that didn't quite make it there, but especially the concept cars. Good question.
Yeah, that is a good one. And that's always got to be a tension of, you can really push the envelope with a concept car.
Sure.
But, even if management gives it an okay, it's like 3 to 4 years away before it shows up.
Exactly, yeah, and that's always the lead time on this is just incredible. It's not like the 18 months when we used to do cars back in the 60s.
That's right.
Unfortunately.
But I mean, we host a design competition at CCS every year, and we have top designers come in and talk to the student designers as they present their awards. And that just reminded me because a couple of the designers spoke up to the students and said, "You have to sell your idea.
Absolutely.
Speak up.
Yes.
Sell your idea," because they said once you get your real job, you have to. You really have to. Maybe the best design in the world. You have to sell it.
You're absolutely right.
Well, I know Rick Rogers, who runs all of CCS, has said
Yes.
that. That's one of the things they're trying to emphasize because, he told me designers tend to be artists. They tend to be introverts. It's like, I did this great work, but I'm just going to be here in the corner.
I hope you like it. Yeah. Right.
You got to sell your ideas. You got to sell
question.
yourself.
Great point. Yes.
So-
Yeah.
So, of course, is that why some designers turn into egomaniacs, though?
Yeah, right. Yeah, once they start believing.
We're not talking
Yeah.
about you, Jack.
Okay,
Honest,
we're
we're
not
not.
talking- yeah.
Honest.
Clarify that.
No, there seem to be so many rock stars since maybe 2000. Maybe that's part of the push is they're teaching designers to do that. So the designer is often the guy who comes out and describes.
They're really featuring it much more than they ever have before. Yeah. I was the only rock star in my day.
Of course.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, we got another phone call here, Ben. Let's bring it in.
Hi, John. This is Cecil from Bird in Hand, Pennsylvania. I'm wondering, with the fuel economy standard being sort of forced on the people, why doesn't the government just raise the gas tax, like Bob Lutz was saying on your show earlier, which would also, as a side benefit, help fund roads and bridges? Thanks. Bye-bye.
Well, I've been preaching that for so many years, like so many other people. It ain't going to happen.
Turn on cable TV. You'll find out.
Tax is a four-letter word in one.
Yeah, I mean,
Any politician that proposes raising taxes, we, the American people, will throw them out on their ear. It's the smart way to do things. That's how the rest of the world does it.
the entire rest of the industrial
And
world. Yeah.
up until Europe introduced its CO2 standards, it had no fuel economy requirement. And to your point earlier, Drew, if it's $8 a gallon, you don't need the government breathing down your neck to say you should go out and buy something fuel efficient.
Yeah.
You don't need that.
Yeah.
So it isn't going to happen. I don't think.
No.
So Let's see, do we have any more questions here? What car, here's a great one. What car did Mr. Telnack wish that Ford put into production that he had sketched?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question, yeah. They put most of them in, most of the ones that I worked on were in production, but I didn't have one that really...
No concept cars that...
well, yeah, well, concept
that
cars...
could have been produced?
Well, sure, yeah. I think going back to that Focus that we, Focus two-seater that we did at Gia, that would have been a great car. And yeah, I'm sure it would have sold, too. You know, that's probably one of the hottest ones we had.
And I think we've got another one, another phone call here. Ben, let's bring that one in.
Jack, great program. John, great program. The question I have for you is regarding styling. Why is the greenhouse continuing to shrink when you compare current cars to, let's say, the 60s or early 70s BMW 2002? The greenhouse has continued to shrink. Visibility has decreased. What can be done in styling or safety issues to bring the wide, large greenhouse back? Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. I'm glad you asked. And when you say shrink, I'm assuming you're talking about height. The glass
like
coming...
the first generation
side
Chrysler
glass
300?
down. Yes, yeah, right.
But he's right. You know, you look at a BMW 2002, it looks like a fishbowl, you know, the greenhouse area compared to today's car.
Those Ford Sunliners had a similar kind of greenhouse to the 2002.
Sure.
Obviously a fastback, but I mean the same sort of very light, thin A and B and C pillar.
Well, I think it's strictly a trend, and I believe that back when BMW was doing that, and I always liked the BMW, the 630, the coupe, way back, which was a very high greenhouse, low belt, and I used to instruct the guys back here in Michigan too when we worked on one of the T-Birds. Give me a low belt and give me a high greenhouse. That is the look I was really trying to achieve, and then all of a sudden the whole trend shifted, and I think Chrysler had a lot to do with that with the 300 by raising the belt. The roof stayed the same. The height of the greenhouse is the same. It's just that the belt came up, really.
Yeah.
Although they've lowered it in the current car.
They have, yeah. The new 300, has the belt actually come down?
Well, I don't know if the belt's come down, but the glass does not look as cheated as before.
You're right, yeah. And I always felt that was kind of a Dick Tracy look. Remember the Dick Tracy cartoons with the low, very low greenhouse? And I wasn't really a great fan of that.
BMW could never do the 2002 again for roof crush standards. Again, it comes back to that.
And I think this gets to the guy's point, because if you just took today's cars and shrunk the size of the A-pillars, B, and even the sail panels down to what they were back when, the greenhouse would look a whole lot bigger now.
Yeah, but you can't meet crush.
You can't meet it for
so we're really restricted on that because of government regulations.
Because the only one I think buy a Mini Cooper, I mean, they're the only ones that I can think of that still have a big, tall greenhouse.
They still do, yeah.
But we drive so many cars these days that have the very thick A-pillars, and they're good for crush, but you can't see around them quite.
No, and not only that.
Yeah, we did that. We've got, that's our cover story coming up, and it's we already did it online. That's it.
Yeah, you did. In fact, we covered that in the Daily Show. There's a second point to it too. Not only are the pillars so big, they're now made out of this boron high-strength steel that the jaws of life can't cut through. So now, if you get special brand new jaws of life, you can do it. But you know, when you look at every municipality and state and county going broke right now, who's got the money to run out and buy all new equipment? So it's crazy to me that, you know, we've done these roof crush standards, and I don't mean to belittle the lives that they're going to save, but it's like 80 lives is what NHTSA estimates that this is going to sell. But how many accidents are your lack of visibility going to cause? You know, what about people who do get in a crush situation and the emergency personnel can't cut them out of the car because they can't cut through this boron steel? It's nuts. There, I'll get off my soapbox. Hey, look, it's at the top of the hour. We ought to wrap this up here, but Jack Telnack, it's been awesome, man. This has been terrific having you.
Yeah, this has been great. I can't believe the time went so fast.
Really.
Yeah, Drew Winter from Ward's Auto World, great having you here as always, and Todd Lassa as well.
Thanks.
And I've got a few other announcements to make here. Remember, the podcast of this is going to be available tomorrow. Don't forget Open Line. You can get the podcast version of that. Great discussion show that we also do. You can go to bit.ly/openpodcast, and you'll get that all there. And folks, you know, we've got some great sponsors of the show. Show your support to them for having shown support to us. Go and click on their ads on our website. They like to know that people are really paying attention to the fact that they're advertising here. And don't forget that you can friend us on Facebook. You can follow us at twitter.com/Autoline. I'll give Peter DeLorenzo, my co-host, a plug, even though he's not here tonight. Follow his stuff at autoextremist.com. And thanks for having tuned in, folks. We'll see you back here next week.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone, passion for excellence. Chevrolet, the all-new Chevrolet Cruze. Get used to more. And by Hyundai. Experience the 2011 Hyundai Sonata today at HyundaiSonata.com.
Good show.
Yeah,
This was
great.
good.
Yeah,
That was
good fun.
fun.
Yeah.
This was a lot of fun. We'll have to do it again.
Yeah, anytime. Yeah. I'm here. I'm in town now.
Well, next time we can talk boats, too. That's another one of your passions, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Matter of fact, I was just in Chicago Monday and Tuesday, and I am now a judge at the Miami Boat Show. Got a group of us together, designers. One is from the West Lawn School of Marine Design, and another is a boat designer, and myself. We're just starting out small, and so looking forward to that. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of designers that you knew, did you ever know Sid Mead when he was at Ford?
Absolutely.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, Sid, yeah. Oh my God, he was so far out. I mean, I knew him before he got to Ford, and he was only at Ford for maybe a couple of years at the most. And he worked with Alex Tremulous there, and they were doing a car that was called the Gyron. Do you ever remember that?
No.
It was
Yeah, the Gyron, right?
Yeah.
50s
it was
concept, right?
Yeah, concept. It was on two wheels and it had these wings coming out. And It was a
Yeah.
wild-looking thing. It really was, and it really worked. And Alex Tremulous was really big on Gyrons. He did. The stuff he got us into was just incredible. He was. I wish he was around. You'd love to have him on your show.
Yeah, no,
He
you know,
was
I never met the guy, never knew the guy. He must have
Oh.
passed away before I got into the business,
Well,
but I
maybe,
never
yeah.
knew him.
Oh no, he was fantastic. He just got the young guys so enthusiastic in the studios and all. He just turned everybody on.
So, well,
but
now-
Sid Mead, yeah, he was terrific.
Oh, here we go.
Now the
Yeah,
Gyron.
Oh wow, how's that happen
Yeah,
so
well,
fast?
Ben,
Boy,
I'm telling you, he's
my
the best.
gosh, yeah.
Wow.
You know
Yeah,
how
all
to
this
Google.
stuff out.
That was it, yeah.
So now that we're off the air, who do you think? Who
It's all live.
Who are doing good stuff? Who are the automakers that you think are on the right track with design, and who are the ones that are going down the wrong path?
Well, I think BMW, first off, is definitely on the right track. I think Mercedes is doing some pretty well. I don't know the CLS.
CLS, right.
The latest CLS. I think. Are we off?
Yeah.
No, we're not.
No.
I got to be honest. No, it's still live. Although this is, there's a very small audience listening.
Okay, well, I think that I love the first CLS. Just a great car.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I thought that car, Jaguar should have been that car. If you really analyze the lines on the first CLS,
Yeah.
the banana shape, a lot of the crown to the inside elevation of the car, even the instrument panel with the amount of wood on it.
Yeah.
My son out in Las Vegas has one, and the first time I got in that car, I thought, oh, this is what Jaguar should have been. They really did. And I think now that they've redone all the sheet metal on the car, I think they lost it. It's just the first one was so clean, so simple, so pure. As a matter of fact, I've got to tell you, the designer of that car was Peter Pfeiffer. And Peter Pfeiffer was a clay modeler at our studio in Cologne, our Ford studio in Cologne, Germany. And he really had a feeling for shape and form. I mean, this guy really understood 3 dimensions. And then when he left us, he went to Mercedes. He became their chief designer, and you could just see his input in all those cars. They got out of all that computer-generated stuff that they were really hot on for a while, and got into real form and 3-dimensional design. And he was responsible for that. And he did that car, and I thought he achieved sainthood with that car. I really did. It was that beautiful. So they're doing a good job, and I think our competitors here in town are doing a good job. I don't know where I don't want to say too much about our competitors, I guess I shouldn't say.
Well, how about Ford? You worked on the original Mustang.
Yes.
And
Well, not the original.
Yeah.
Oh, you did the original?
No, I didn't do it, but I was I was just a
worked on
young
it.
guy. Yeah,
Oh, I
Joe
didn't
Orris was
realize
running the
that.
studio at the time. Oh, yeah, I got a great background, John. Let me
Oh, yeah.
tell you.
Jack sketch. He talked about
well,
a sketch.
Well, no, I did the first sketch. I still have it for the first fastback version of that car.
Right.
And but I can remember. Yeah, I can remember. Yeah, Joe Orris was running the studio at the time, and he got about a half a dozen of us younger. I was a young guy though. I used to be a young guy too. Together.
We all
and,
used to be.
Yeah. And I can remember we met at the Dearborn Inn one night, and we had this brainstorming session. And I just read a book. I think it was Vance Packard's Hidden Persuaders or something like that. And I was expounding all this kind of stuff, and Joe was looking at me like, "Where is this guy from? The moon is. We're just talking about doing this car." But anyway, I was talking about the influence of packaging and all this sort of thing. And anyway, we went to work on that car, and there was just a very small team, and I was fortunate enough to be on that team. But my real contribution, I did the first wheel covers for that car. Being a young guy, just doing details, but I did the first sketch for the fastback, which had a strong influence on the first fastback that we came out on that. I still have it.
So, and you worked on obviously on the Fox Mustang, and
yes.
So okay, look at where Mustang is today. What would you do with the next one?
Good question, and I know they're working on it right now. And I can't tell you what they're doing because I haven't seen anything lately. But you'll recognize. The only thing I can guarantee is you will recognize it as a Mustang. It's not going off in some different direction.
Sure.
But that's about all I can say about it. I don't know. What would I do?
Yeah. What would you do?
What I do? Well, I'd like to have a crack at it.
Any pencil and paper?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We can have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
The reason I was asking
There
about.
it is. Oh my God!
Yeah.
Where did he find that? What?
Is that your?
That's it. That's my sketch. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. Oh my! Man, he's a genius.
Yeah.
What
That's
the
pretty
devil?
good. That's really good.
That's incredible. Yeah. That was it.
And I
Wow,
see a little bit of
really
Aeroline in that
with
too.
the lights
Yeah,
and
I know,
everything.
yeah, right. Oh, and I got to tell you, the name on there is Cougar because the code name for that program was Cougar back then. We didn't call it a Mustang, so that's how early that is. Yeah. All this funny little details that go on to the thing. How did I'm amazing.
Yeah, we thought Motor Trend thought at the time that it was going to be called the Cougar. Now that I work on Classic, I look through a lot of old issues, and they're some 1963, 63 story. Intel on the Ford Cougar.
Cougar there too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah! Wow.
And the lights, because the lights, they originally were going like this, right? And then they're going on the
Yeah, they have a
fastback. They
peak-
started going, and then they
Peak section.
Yeah.
But always a triple. And I keep on every, if I was doing another Mustang, I'd hold on to some of those serious cues, the triple tail lights.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Were part of it. Even though we got away from it at different times, we went horizontal with them one time and all, but I'd keep.
Yeah.
And you got to have the Mustang mouth, some version of the Mustang mouth. That's all there is to it. Yeah.
And long hood, short deck.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know. But we at one time before we did the, it was after we did the '79 Mustang. We had a designer working with us, Tom Scott. I brought him over from the UK, and he was running our Gia studio that was coming under him for a while, and he did a very fast windshield, not long hood, fast windshield Mustang that just couldn't get through. So nobody understood it except the designers, but it still said Mustangs. I'd like, if I had a crack at it again, I would try something with, I do long hood short decks, but I'd try something without a long hood short deck, but just have all the Mustang cues on it. I think you know it's a Mustang. Somebody's got to try it.
So this had a fast windshield and as a result, short.
This was almost like, do you remember the GT90 that we did, that concept car?
Yeah.
It was almost like that. It was that wild, but yet you knew it was a Mustang. Never saw the light of day. It was never a concept car. It was strictly in the studio, but it was a proposal for a Mustang. It was hot, and I think we could have gotten away with it. We would have been way ahead of the game at the time. I've always been pushing for faster windshields on the cars. It's just same thing on boats. Get faster windshields. It's so easy. You can predict the future. You know where it's going. You can just see where it's going. You really can.
I've got a question about process. I remember
There's
when
the GT90.
you mentioned,
Oh my God.
God.
But that Mustang was this kind of a look through the front end. Well, the one of the guys higher up in the company who really understood, really caught on. Do you remember Peter Pastillo?
Oh yeah.
He walked in the studio. I'll never forget. He said, "Oh, that is it.
Really?
Nobody else."
He's a labor guy.
But now
He loved cars. I think he had Ferraris and all.
Oh, no kidding?
Yeah. And he said, "Oh yeah, but nobody." I said, "Help me, please." And he spread the gospel here. But yeah, no kidding. I wish we probably got pictures of that someplace.
When we did our fantasy pick, starting our own car companies and everything, my first pick was a designer. I went with Giugiaro.
Okay.
And because I say, design is what makes people's heart go pitter-pat. That's what makes people go, oh my God, what is that? I gotta have that.
Well,
the rest of the stuff, make everyone figure out how to make it look good.
designers typically outlast the CEOs by a long, by a long margin.
Yeah, I haven't heard of too many getting fired.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
But it's the pendulum's gone too far of trying to accommodate engineering and manufacturing and purchasing, I think. I know it's got to be a balance.
Yeah, it does.
But what motivates people to say, I want that? I mean, Apple's the best example, right? People just go gaga over the design. You can buy all kinds of other stuff, most of it cheaper.
Yes.
But people want that look.
Sure.
And so that's why I say design should be on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And it is, and I think it's certainly. I think Bob Lutz put them back on the track at GM. I really do.
He really, and I think they got the right guy with Ed Wellborn to do it too.
Yeah, and.
But I wanted to ask you before, when you mentioned Tom Scott, there was a time 10 years or 12 years ago when there was a lot of talk about you were going to turn clay models, they were going to be holograms, and everything's going to be digital and all this stuff, and it seems like that never happened. I mean,
we tried it. And good you mentioned Tom Scott because he was really big into holograms and all. I remember we went over to in Glasgow, Scotland, to the Glasgow University or whatever it was, the school over there, and they were really big into that. And he was pushing this whole hologram idea. And we were supposed to have a hologram at the Detroit Auto Show. I'll say it was in '97 or something like that. And we were going to have Alex Stropman, who was our chairman at the time, was supposed to walk around this hologram on stage and be able to open the doors and all this sort of thing. We never quite got there. It seemed like it was always just that far from getting it. But in my opinion, you still have to do clay models. We're dealing with a three-dimensional product. I mean, you would never buy a car from a picture in a magazine, would you? Maybe you would.
Maybe.
Only if it was Motor Trend.
A Motor Trend Classic, of course, yeah.
Motor Trend Classic.
But,
well, that would be an old car, though.
Yeah, okay. But you've got to see a 3D model. And I pushed it to the point where at Ford, we wouldn't just take the clay models into our courtyard and spin them around turntables. I put them on the test track. So we could have them out on the test track without the other guys driving on the track, of course, and get in car and get the competitive cars out there around it, and get in a car and drive around it. See what it looks like on the road. This is a clay model, all die-knocked. It looks like the real animal. And that's the only way to evaluate it.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree.
How much design detail can you do on a clay model after it's completed? Do you go up to them? Did you go up to them and say, okay, let's, here's a little scallop here? I mean, or is it all always pretty much done by then?
Oh, no, well, it depends on the phase you're in, but you can do anything you want in clay.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think, again, I mentioned Mercedes before when they were doing everything on a computer, and they got back into clay when Peter Pfeiffer went back over there. Yeah. And then he started getting the much better form and shape to their cars. Mm-hmm. But no, it's essentially you have to get into 3D.
Well, the digital stuff is good once you've got the clay done, then digitize it, and then the engineers can do whatever they want.
Yeah, see, we used to, before you say, well, you have to get all that information off the clay and you got to freeze it and all this sort of thing. Well, you can scan a clay overnight, I mean, with the equipment we have now, and then throw it in, scan the clay and throw it in. All the engineers have their information. All of a sudden they can start working on body panels. You can start building hard models out of that as quickly as you want. When I was in Australia, back in the dark ages, we remember we were doing the Australian Falcon, an all-new car, which was really an exciting program down there. What they call the XA, Falcon XA, which is real. We did a beautiful coupe on that car too. I don't know if you ever saw pictures of that.
It was 60s, was that? Or
that would have been even before. No, before. Yeah, it was in the 60s. Yeah, late 60s. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And matter of fact, I saw that
Yeah, I think I know
fastback.
which one you mean.
There was a movie, Mad
that
Max,
Mad Max, right?
with Mel Gibson. He was driving and had the engine coming out of the hood and all, just wild thing. And then the first time I saw it, I said, "Oh my God, look at that!" I worked on that car years ago. But when we did those cars, of course, we did them in clay down there, and we couldn't transmit them back here for management to look at. And that was when Bunky Knudsen was running the company. So I brought the team back, well, I brought a couple of designers and a couple of modelers back from Australia to recreate the car in Dearborn in clay so they could view it. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think it was a two-door, wasn't it?
This was
That's the Ford.
sedan, yeah.
No, that was the, not Fairmont, what do you call it? Yeah, that was called the Fairmont. That was the big Falcon. Okay. We used the same doors, we just stretched it a little bit. Well, that could have been, that was the XA, but it's a four-door sedan, yeah. It was a two-door. See how good your guy is.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a two-door.
Okay, Ben, cough up a two-door.
Yeah, think Mel Gibson, think Mad Max. Yeah. But we had to bring, because we could have, and Bunky came down there to Australia too to see us, but then by the time we got the program going, we had to come back here so management could approve the car. We had to recreate it in clay. Today, you'd never do that. Today, you could send that information back. They could mill the damn thing out for them overnight, and you could walk in the studio and look at it the next day. I mean, that's how far it's advanced.
What do you think of one Ford, of all the design?
Is this it? Is this the two-door?
That's it, yeah.
Oh, there you
I
go.
wish you had
See,
a
look
rear
at
view
that,
of it. Oh, yeah, it was wild.
Look at that
Just
design.
wild. And Brian Rossi was the designer on that project.
And the NACA hood scoops that later went on the Mustang.
Yeah, right. We had everything. See, we had so much freedom down there too. We were 13,000 miles away from Dearborn, and we could really do these
Get some
things.
things done.
Yeah,
Right.
honest to God.
Should have had a faster windshield, though.
Yeah, but yeah, if I had it to do over, absolutely.
That's pretty fast enough right there.
But Bunky approved those cars. He really did. I'll never forget it when we had the clay models here, and he walked in and we had a feasibility studio that was working on the car and changing a lot of the things on it. They took one side of the car, the clay model, and feasibilized it, and they had the other side. And Bunky finally, I was just a young guy. I was probably about 30, maybe 31 years old at the time. And Bunky Knudsen came up, he said, "Well, what side do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, easy, my side." And he was a good guy. He was a good guy to work for. He really was. And he really knew cars. He was.
Well, that's why Ford took him in, but then he didn't last long. He butted head with Iacocca.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, you know the famous line going around Ford at the time, Bunky is history.
Yeah.
I never heard
When they
that.
got
That's
rid of him.
good.
And he brought in a designer by the name of Larry Shinoda from GM.
from
Remember
GM,
Larry?
right.
And then Larry did the flatback Mustang. Remember the flatback? That was
Yeah,
what year was that?
71.
71, yeah, right. The Boss, yeah. And then the crazy story, are we still being recorded? I guess I can tell you the story.
Yeah,
It's okay.
it's long enough ago,
Okay.
right? And Larry's no longer
Statute
with
of
us.
limitations.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Before, unfortunately, Larry died. His head was cut off, and he was on a snowmobile. He went through a wire or something.
Oh, is that
Oh,
right?
it's terrible.
Oh
yeah.
my God.
But he was when he was working for the company, and Bunky was just released, and Gene Bourdonnais was our vice president of design at the time, and Larry was in Europe on some assignment, and Larry called back and says, "Well, I understand that Bunky's no longer with us, Gene. Is everything okay?" And Gene says, "Yeah, Larry, I just want you to know you're no longer on expenses."
Wow.
So that was it for Larry. But Gene
Yeah,
couldn't-
because he was
a Bunky.
he was a Bunky guy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And Bunky later then went to White Motors.
He
If
did,
you
yeah.
remember the truck company, and Shinoda went with him there.
Yeah. And would you believe Shinoda had the guts to come back to the company when Jack Nasser was running things, when Jack Nasser was running product development? He called Jack Nasser. He said, he had a strange accent. It wasn't just Oriental. I don't know what it was, but he stuttered a lot, I think. And he said, "Hey, well, I'd like to bring some of my sketches in." And Jack Nasser called me and says, "Do you know this guy?" And I said, "Yeah, I know him." He said, "Well, should we have him in?" I said, "Well, look at what he's doing." He came in and he's throwing all these sketches. He had the guts to come back after he was thrown out of the company, wanting to do more stuff for us.
Well, I'll tell you another story too, is when he left GM to go to Ford, he came in with, when would that have been?
Went to Ford?
Knudsen would have been 69.
Yeah, I was in Australia.
So it must have been
when he first
69.
left.
Anyway,
68, 69.
Yeah.
Larry took some hot Ford, I don't know what it was at the time, drove to the GM styling studio garage.
After he left GM?
Yeah, because he had left GM.
All right.
He told me the story, so I
okay,
can tell
all
the
right,
story.
okay, all right, yeah.
Bunky says, hey, I'm going to Ford. Larry, I want you to come with me.
Yeah.
So Larry was going to tell everybody off at GM Design. So he drives some car down there, like gives the finger to everyone, and does a burnout out of the garage.
Oh my! Had to be Larry. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, he grew up in a concentration camp, and yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I never heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was when he died. We did a piece on him. He was like, a small child at that time.
Sure. Yeah.
But his family was interned in World War II, and had kind of, I think, that gave him an attitude, I guess.
Yeah.
And he was he was a very, very proud American, I think.
Absolutely.
But he had an attitude. I mean, he just, he had an attitude.
Oh, yeah, no, he had an attitude. He also tried to sue Chrysler, too, because he claimed he did the original Jeep Grand Cherokee.
Right. Yeah.
And when you see the sketches he did, it was like, damn, Larry might be right.
We did a story on that, too, yeah. I can't remember how the outcome of that was, but you didn't mess with Larry.
No. When he left Ford, I'll never forget it, because he was in the international studio. It was an international advanced studio at the time. I was in Australia. But they said, and I wasn't here when it happened, they said when he left, the international studio had flags from all the different nations around the studio. And they just had partitions, maybe a little higher than these. So the flags were up high. You could see them all around in other studios. They said the day he left, the Japanese flag came down in the studio. But yeah.
Well, there's some characters in the business, especially
yeah.
on the design side.
Oh, absolutely. We had them. We really had them. Yeah. Which made it a little more interesting, I guess, than finance.
Seems like you're pretty good friends with Jay Mays. He calls you over every now and then. And
Yeah, well, he's of course he's most of the time he's in Europe, but we do get together once in a while. Yeah.
Well, good. Okay. We ought to hang it up here. So
Yeah.
I can let Ben go home so he doesn't have to Google up all these pictures.
Yeah, right. Poor guy. Hey, great job.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, this was just
well,
terrific.
fun. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate it.
Jack,
Good seeing you again, Todd. Yeah.
It was just great talking to you.
My fun.